All right, hi everybody. In case you need some verbal explanation of today's notes, here you go. That's what this is for. Or if you just have trouble getting to sleep because of daylight savings time, whatever works for you. So at the top here, we've got, I wanted to do a little summary of what we've already been over. These are the two forms of the vertex, one where you're vertical or up and down, and one where it's horizontal axis symmetry or it opens left or right. And in both cases, you can see I have the formula there. And in both of these standard forms, the letter that's squared is on the right. That is not something that you absolutely have to do. You can keep the letter squared on the left if you'd like, but that is something we need to focus on because it is the letter squared that controls which way it opens. Of course, if x is squared, it opens up or down, and if y is squared, it opens left or right, and that's the important part. And also in both cases, you can see that the vertex is HK. We do take the opposite when it's written like this. This is not like the other day where we had the plus k sticking out. So we do have both of the cases are written in minus, x minus h in both spots, and then y minus k in both spots, but you can see the vertex is hk. So as a quick reminder, we're going to go over real quick just how to complete the square, because completing the square is a big deal in order to put this in standard form. And you can see that in both cases of the standard form, we have a binomial squared, and that's what we have to recreate. So before we do a problem, and I'll do completing the square a couple more times after this, you will focus on the term that has the letter with the power of 1, or the value of b, or essentially what that is in terms of a, x squared, by. You're going to take half of that. Half of negative 2 is 1, and 1 squared, of course, is still 1. So we're going to add 1 to both sides. Yes, you always add. Then, of course, you have a binomial squared. It is the letter, the first sign, and the number that you squared, not the answer, although in this case it is the same. It is the number that we squared. And the right-hand side, you just do whatever it says. So in order to make these equations look like the ones above, we're going to have to put this in standard form. The idea is that we can recreate this binomial squared, this x minus h quantity squared or y minus k quantity squared, either one. There's graph paper there only to sort of help organize your thoughts so that you can have a little visual in terms of what the parts are. You do not have to draw the graph. The directions do not say draw the graph. It says write the equation and then find all of the parts. So you can see that the x squared is on the left-hand side. I'm going to leave it there. And so we're going to just have this as x squared minus 2x. I'm going to complete the square. You complete the square on the side with the letter squared, and the other side just gets whatever it gets. Of course, we do have to add to both sides. I just now in my graph, but I don't think that'll matter. So half of 2 is 1. 1 squared, we're going to add 1 to both sides. So this is x minus 1 quantity squared. The right-hand side, we have negative 8y and then negative 9 plus 1. So negative 8y minus 8. It is just a coincidence. Those are both negative 8s. It's probably not going to be like that again. But on the right-hand side, you do have to factor out what they have in common. And so that's going to be a negative 8. Leaves you with y plus 1. Be very close, pay very close attention to your signs because the signs control the vertex, and if your vertex is off, everything else will be off because we're going to use that to count from. And so now we really want, remember we want the 1 over 4d, we want this fraction over here in front of the letter squared. So in order to make that happen, I'm going to divide both sides by negative 8. And I'm going to write this as 1 over negative 8 times x minus 1 quantity squared is equal to y plus 1. And so now when you're doing the vertex, you want the opposite of each part, and make sure you put it xy. That doesn't mean left right, it means xy. It might not be left right. So the opposite of negative 1 is 1, and the opposite of positive 1 is negative 1. So there's our vertex. Now we also have that negative 1 over 8, which represents 1 over 4d. Now of course you don't have to leave them both as fractions. You could just say, oh, negative 8 equals 4d, and so therefore d would equal negative 2. Now the fact that this is negative, it means that's going to control the direction. X is squared, so it either goes up or down because it's x squared. And because d is negative, now you know it's going to go down. That's kind of an important part. Otherwise, you won't know where to count. So I'm going to put the vertex on the graph. So I have 1, -1. There's my vertex. And I know that the focus has to be inside the parabola. I know this thing is going to go down. So the focus is going to be 2 down from there, and the directrix is going to be 2 going the other way. So that's all the graph is there for, is just to sort of help you put it on a grid so that you can physically see the point, so that you can write the coordinates or the equation. So the focus is at the point 1, -3. We got that just from counting and reading the grid. And then the directrix touches the y-axis at 1, so it's y = 1. The axis of symmetry, which is this line going the other way, the one that connects all three, touches the x-axis at 1. So your axis of symmetry is the equation x = 1. And of course, when you write those directrix and axis answers, they need to be equations. Saying that they're 1, that's not an equation. That's a number. So it's not very helpful. So let's try this again. Now we've got y², and again, I'm going to leave that letter squared on the left. Now, what you want to have is just the parts that go with y. Y goes with y. No x's are allowed, so we got to get this 6x to the other side, and this plain number also has to go to the other side. We want only the things with y grouped together on the left. So y² plus 2y. Now I'm going to complete the square on this side, so I'm going to leave a blank for myself. Then I have to I have to add the 6x and subtract the 13. And of course, we're going to complete the square on this side as well. Apparently I like 2. Half of 2 is 1. 1² is 1. We add 1 to both sides. So again, it is the letter, the first sign, the number you squared. The right-hand side, do the arithmetic. We get 6x minus 12. Factor out what they have in common on the right, which is a 6, leaving you with x minus 2. And again, we want that 6 in front of this other side. So that's going to be 1/6 times y plus 1, quantity squared, is equal to x minus 2. Vertex goes x, y. You're going to have to read this one backwards. Vertex, opposite, which is 2, and opposite, -1. There's your vertex. Now, of course, the part that really controls this is the d. And so you can do 1/6 = 1/4d. I'm just going to skip that part and do 6 = 4d. When you divide both sides by 4, you get 3/2, which of course is 1.5. If you'd rather have a decimal, that's fine. So d is 1.5. Now we have y², and y² is different. Y² opens left or right, and because d is positive, this thing is going to open up to the right. So we go to put this vertex on here to -1. 1.5 spaces to the right is where the focus is. 1.5 spaces, because it has to open this way. So outside the parabola, completely outside of the parabola, 1.5 spaces the other way, this is your directrix. And again, this is just a sketch. I'm drawing it on here kind of sloppy on purpose, just to show you that it really doesn't matter. It's there for you. So let's write down these parts before I get much further. The focus is over 3.5 and down 1. The axis, which is not what I have yet, let's do that. Directrix touches the y-axis. Oops, no, it doesn't. It touches the x-axis at 1/2. It's the axis that touches the y-axis. The axis symmetry would be right here, and it touches the y-axis at -1. Now we're going to go backwards, and we're going to write the equation. So you've got the equations in the front, but they follow a very similar pattern. I'm going to follow the pattern on the front in that I'm going to keep the letter squared on the right. So I'm going to make these match the pattern on the front. The grid is not really part of the question. Drawing the graph is not something you have to do. But I like to have a graph because I like to keep my work neat, and I think it helps to space everything out correctly. I'm going to actually put these points right on the graph because I don't really know even what I have. I have no idea if it up's, down, left, right, no clue. So vertex, or focus rather, is at 1, 2. And the vertex is at 3, 2. Okay, so that means this thing goes this direction. It goes to the right. And that's what you can tell from that orientation of the points. Actually, I don't know my left and right. That is really left, as you know, sorry. And so since it's left, we know that it's y². Also, since it's left, we know that D has to be negative. How do you find D? You physically count the spaces between these 2 points. That is 2 spaces, so D is -2. Let's remember we have to do 1 over 4D. So if you do 1 over 4 times -2, that's going to be the -1/8 that goes in front of the side with the y squared. So your vertex, this is H, this is K. We need those numbers. Also, you do the opposite. So because this goes left, because y squared, that'll be on the right. So we have x minus 3 equals -1/8, 1 over 4D, times y minus 2 quantity squared. That's it. Like I said, the graph, not really part of it. It's just there to sort of help you get your stuff in the right spot. So you can count D and have it count correctly. So your graph isn't all wobber-jawed. So our focus now is at 3, 0. I always label it too, because otherwise in 5 seconds I'm going to forget. And then the vertex is 3, 2. So there's your vertex. This one obviously means that it goes down. And you don't have to write this out. I'm just writing it out so you know what my thinking is. That means you know that you have x squared. It also means the D is negative. So again, we count the spaces between the vertex and the focus, and we see that D is -2 once again. Now, because this goes down, that means x is squared. So over here, we're going to have x quantity squared. Except I got to leave space for my D, my 1 over 4D. So 1 over 4D would be -1/8 again. And the vertex is right here. X gets a -3. Make sure it's in the right order. And then y gets the opposite, which is a -2. And in case you need it one more time, focus 2, 2. Vertex 2, 1. Focus, vertex. This one goes up. Up, you know that's y equals x squared. So again, we have x squared. Also, we know that D is positive. So here, the space between those is 1. So the vertex, don't forget about that. The x squared is going to be over here with the 1 over 4D in front of it. And the x coordinate is a negative, well, it's the opposite of 2, and the y is the opposite of 1. And that's how it works. That's how you put all these back together. Your homework assignment's there at the bottom on page 356. Please do 9 through 13 all. I hope this helped you. See you.